Bashir joins us now live from the AK party headquarters in Istanbul, where no doubt it is still very loud right now. Nada, just give us a sense of the feeling there.
Yeah, it is very loud, Linda. You can hear the crowds behind me. The numbers here have dwindled a little bit in the last couple of minutes, but there is still a huge turnout here. We've seen thousands of Erdogan supporters streaming through the streets, gathering outside the AK party's headquarters here in Istanbul, joining together to celebrate President Erdogan's victory. Now, of course, we've been speaking to a lot of the voters here. For them, this is a vote for political stability. They truly believe in the vision that President Erdogan has for this country. And of course, this is a president who has led the country now for over 2 decades now, of course, cementing his rule for another 5 years. You can hear the cars honking behind me. This has been happening for the last couple of hours or so. We've seen flares being set off, fireworks being set off, and this is really, I have to say, a family affair. We've seen many families here with very young children gathering here to witness what really is a historic moment, another term in office for President Erdogan. Of course, people here are jubilant, but that doesn't take away from the fact that there are some significant challenges ahead for President Erdogan, and of course, this is also a real blow to Turkey's opposition alliance.
I want to ask you more about those challenges facing the president. Right now, the country obviously is in this economic crisis with very high inflation, but also dealing with the aftermath of those earthquakes back in February, which left tens of thousands of people dead, over 1 million people homeless. How will Mr. Erdogan address these challenges in the years ahead?
Well, President Erdogan and his party, his government, have faced real backlash over their policies when it comes to the economy and, of course, to its response to the earthquake. We've seen a cost of living crisis which has left few not impacted, really. Many of them, of course, here have been impacted by the cost of living crisis, soaring inflation and a weakening lira. President Erdogan's unorthodox monetary policies have been criticised by economists as being to blame for the current state of the country's economy. And then, of course, there is the aftermath of February's devastating earthquake. President Erdogan's government faced real criticism in the immediate aftermath for what was a chaotic and somewhat delayed response. But there are also still questions around liability, responsibility, why the government wasn't prepared for a catastrophe of that scale, and also, of course, the question of building amnesties introduced by President Erdogan. Many, of course, wondering, questioning whether this could be as well partly to blame for the sheer scale of the destruction and the devastation that we saw in Turkey's southeast. As you mentioned there, at least 50,000 people killed and millions still displaced. So these are significant challenges. This is something that the opposition has certainly been focusing on over the course of their campaign. We heard from President Erdogan speaking a little while ago from his Istanbul residence. That video message, that speech was played out live here to the crowd, and he in fact addressed the earthquake. He recommitted his pledge to provide permanent housing and accommodation to those impacted within the next year. But these are significant challenges for the president. And when it comes to the economy, there are real questions as to whether the president will stay on his current track, whether he will push through with this vision that he has been following through for the last few months and years, or whether we may see a U-turn, a change in tack. Who will he appoint as his finance ministers? These are all key questions. President Erdogan has a lot of challenges ahead, and now we'll see how he plans to fulfill those promises that he made. Linda?
Nada Bashir at the AK party headquarters. Good to have you there for us. Thanks very much. We will come back to you soon, no doubt. Well, for some more analysis, I want to welcome back Cagaptay, the director of the Turkish research program at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, as well as Yusuf, the editor-at-large for TRT World. Good to have you both with us. Yusuf, I'll start with you, because this wasn't a landslide. This was not an overwhelming victory, but the runoff was a victory nonetheless. Is Erdogan going to be a leader for all, including those who didn't vote for him?
Well, I expect going forward exactly what we've seen in the past. But as guests said in the past, earlier in the program, and I definitely agree with what they said regarding the legacy building that Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan is going to concentrate on. So he's going to prioritize things like a new constitution. He's going to prioritize diplomacy in Ukraine. He's going to prioritize the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean and the Aegean with Greece, especially with the new Greek Prime Minister having a 5-year mandate as well. So it's going to really free up their shackles from a domestic politics point of view, where they can engage each other in more meaningful diplomacy going forward. Again, the situation in Syria, also the 3.5 million refugees. These will be the major issues, I think, going forward that he's going to look at, because he views these issues as legacy building, and he wants to improve his standing in history. How is history going to remember him? How will the Turkish opinion judge him going forward? And these are definitely issues that are going to be very high on his agenda going forward. But I mean, the Turkish president, I was listening to Soner earlier. I just wanted to address something that he said, that he's most likely going to crack down the opposition. I don't see anything like that. I think the Turkish president's going to sit back and watch the opposition dismantle itself, because it's going to go through a period of reorganization. That's, I think, inevitable. I think there's many very talented politicians in the wings of the CHP that are now seriously considering a run for the chairmanship of that party now that Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu has been unsuccessful once again in elections. I think one of the major binding issues of this very wide, eclectic views involved in the opposition alliance was their opposition to Erdogan. And now that that's lifted, now that that's off the table, now that all these parties have gotten their seats in parliament, there's really nothing holding them together. And Erdogan's just going to sit back, poach the parties that he can to his alliance. There's some conservative parties, some nationalist parties in there that he can either poach the party as a whole to his alliance or pick off members of parliament from their party. He's going to try to get a supermajority, more than 360 members of parliament. So he's not going to crack down. He's just, as there is a saying, never interrupt your enemy while he's making a mistake. And he's just going to watch them deteriorate by themselves. So he's going to wait for his opportunity, try to pick off the members of parliament, and again, have the infighting do the work for him.
That's an interesting perspective. And I do want to bring in Soner for more on this. Soner, you are an expert in Turkish politics. You've been following Erdogan for years. You wrote a book called The New Sultan, Erdogan and the Crisis of Modern Turkey. What, from your perspective, is the most significant crisis facing Erdogan right now?
I would say the crisis is that President Erdogan has, until recently, won elections on a platform of strong economic growth. That was not the case going into this election. So, and then you had a unified opposition. On paper, he should not have won, but he did. I think that is because, as Yusuf was saying, the opposition did not do a good job of staying put. I would say opposition leader Kılıçdaroğlu had an impressive campaign, given that he's from a leftist background. A leftist candidate never won this many votes in Turkey's elections. Obviously, not everyone who voted for him is leftist, but I would say, in general, President Erdogan played it very smart. He basically made a case that Turkey had problems, but he said, only I can fix them. And I think that opposition leader Kılıçdaroğlu did not convince the electorate that he had put together a team capable of running Turkey better than Erdogan if he had won. So President Erdogan now gets a fresh term. He's going to be tempted, in my view, as Yusuf said, to get a supermajority in the parliament because of the way the lists were run. Opposition leader Kılıçdaroğlu, though his party is leftist, ran many right-wing candidates, which President Erdogan can poach from him. He could reach easily a constitution-changing majority. And if he wants to, President Erdogan could launch new culture wars on which he thrives, such as banning LGBTQ, or he has far-right allies which have misogynist views that want to, takes away some of women's rights, or criminalize adultery, or instigate segregated public education. Not that all this will happen, even though incremental steps towards that end. He might be tempted because he does have far-right allies with these archaic views. So I think the plate is his, or the page is his in a way. It's a blank page. He can fill it any way he likes. He swept through the parliament. His victory, as I said earlier, is impressive but not surprising, given his incumbency advantages. And finally, he handpicked his opponent. The more popular candidate would have been Istanbul Mayor İmamoğlu. a court case because President Erdogan, sadly and unfortunately for Turkey's democracy, controls main institutions, including courts. A court case brought against Samir Imamoğlu basically kind of voted him out. There's a case against him for insulting election officials, and the case basically was used to put him aside, and that allowed a less popular candidate to contest President Erdogan. Meanwhile, of course, President Erdogan has called his opponent craven, immoral. So perhaps this is not the race where it was fair. It is the race where one side could say anything and do anything, and the other side was denied the same platforms, however unfair they are. So I would say this will go down in history as Turkey's perhaps least fair votes since the first free and fair elections in 1950.
Wow. Sana Cagaptay and Yusuf, Erim, thank you both very much. If you can stand by for us, I want to go now to journalist Barcin Yinanc to discuss the vote and its implications. She joins us now from Istanbul, and she's an independent journalist. Good to have you with us. I want to ask you about this election and what this could mean for journalists going forward. We know that President Erdogan has consistently cracked down on the free press, arresting and detaining scores of journalists and academics. Will he continue this increasing line of authoritarian rule, which has divided Turkey in the past?
I do believe he would continue because from now on, he is going to start working for the municipal elections. And we have municipal elections in 1 year time. And today, when he will be looking to the election results in the big cities like capital Ankara, Istanbul, Izmir, Antalya, they are all in all these cities. Actually, Mr. Kılıçdaroğlu is ahead of him. And therefore, he is also known to have said that the one who gets Istanbul rules Turkey. And in his first initial speech, he has also talked about, getting back Istanbul. Therefore, he doesn't have much to offer. I do not know how he's going to manage to run the economy because he has been delaying time and over the economic crisis. And while his supporters could vote over fears about, terrorism, etc. When it comes to municipal elections, I think these fear factor about, the country being divided or, sliding towards terrorism, etc. I think daily issues will factor in much more strongly. Therefore, I think he would continue on cracking down the supporters of the opposition, especially when he sees all these young supporters of the opposition going to the ballot box as election observers, as election officials. I think he will continue on spreading fear and creating chilling effects in order to discourage opposition supporters to come and participate more actively in political life. And I do believe that journalists will also suffer as a consequence.
All right. Barcin Yinanc, if you can stand by for us, we really appreciate your perspective. We are going to take a short break. We are waiting to hear from the Turkish President, Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He is due to give his victory speech on the presidential balcony at any moment. We'll take a quick break. We'll be right back.